What's going on in Hudson Valley real estate? If anybody tells you they know, don't believe them. In this video, we'll look at a few things that we do know, we'll make a few predictions, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that demographic megatrend, escape from New York. I'm Joel Craig. I'm your guide to Hudson Valley lifestyle and real estate. And as always, what we talk about today shouldn't be taken as professional, legal, financial, or health advice, and it doesn't necessarily reflect the opinions of my broker. So let's get right into it. What's going on? I made a video back in March at the beginning of this whole pandemic thing. And I intended to make a video every month, but I have to tell you, April and May have been like April Fool's Day every day of the week. Let me set the scene for you. Back in February, early March, we're transitioning out of winter, getting ready for the big spring real estate season. It looks like it's going to be a banner year. There's a lot of pent-up demand from the previous year, buyers that didn't find what they were looking for. There's a lot of new buyers coming onto the market. The economy is good, and there's a lot of great things happening in the Hudson Valley, all set up to be a banner year, and then bang, pandemic. And everything kind of comes screeching to a halt because if you remember way back in long ago history, March of 2020, when this first thing hit, we're watching the counts go up every day. All of a sudden the businesses are closed, we're on lockdown, and everything came to a screeching halt. And then, as we get a month or 2 months into this, people start to realize that, hey, I got to get out of there. And that's where we start with our story from Escape from New York. A lot of the folks, if they could find a place to rent or if they had friends or relatives, they headed out of the city up here and they've been, hiding out up here, and they're getting to like it. And they're starting to rethink the whole life in New York City. And a lot of them had already started to think in that direction. They were already thinking, as we've seen in recent years, there's been a whole wave of people coming up, either second homes or transitioning to the Hudson Valley. And so I think that was really kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. All right, we're going to find a home in the Hudson Valley. So we're seeing a lot of pent-up demand, even though realtors are just now getting to show houses in some places. Before that, we couldn't even show houses, but still houses would come on the market. They'd have offers in a couple of days. They'd have multiple offers, and it was just kind of crazy considering all the other things that were going on in our economy. So let's talk about that. Let's see what they've been saying in the news. Wall Street Journal has kind of been following this whole mega trend of New York City folks moving into the Hudson Valley for a long time. And they've done several articles on it. And the first article, when this whole pandemic thing started, they were kind of one of the first ones to catch on to it. And Wall Street Journal of April 21st, they have a big article, Escape from New York City. And it says many New York residents are packing up their apartments and heading for the hills or suburbs to escape the pandemic, some permanently. And we find that that's been very true. Certainly demand has picked up. And of course, with the pandemic, a lot of people who were going to list their house in the spring, they delayed putting it on there. Obviously, they didn't want strangers walking through their house and so forth. So that has kind of increased the problem because there's just no inventory. You got lots of folks who are looking, lots of folks who are urgently looking to find a place in the Hudson Valley, and there's just nothing out there. And so you get these competitive bidding wars and so forth. Wall Street Journal again on April 26, people were leaving New York City before the coronavirus. Now what? And they go on to give a couple examples. Ross Sapper's customers are clear when they call to hire a moving van. They're leaving New York City because of the coronavirus crisis, and they aren't sure when or if they'll be returning. Mr. Sapper, president of Roadway Moving, said his storage business is booming as people with the motivation and means flee the epicenter of the pandemic. Many clients are leaving before figuring out where they're going. and want movers to go into their now uninhabited apartments and pack their stuff. So again, early on, people are panicking and they're moving out, and apparently some, without a clear destination, they're just going to move. And I do see this, with some of my clients. Some of them have canceled their lease, and they have just rented a place up here until they find a place to buy. So that's certainly happening. I don't know the magnitude of that. That's pretty radical to just pick up and leave, but apparently there are some examples. So then the New York Post on April 29th runs an article. These New Yorkers fleeing coronavirus vow they'll never return. And of course they found some examples, and they say in the article, many Gothamites have fled the 5 boroughs for safer havens, from vacation homes in the Hamptons to parents' basements in the Midwest until the coronavirus pass. But now diehard New Yorkers, some of whom had never even considered leaving the city before, are thinking about staying away for the long haul. And okay, that's just following up on this whole escape from New York trend. The following day in Metro Focus, article, Escape from New York. Social distancing has led to social migration for many New Yorkers trying to ride out the crisis. The pandemic has people rethinking their living situation and considering relocating to less densely populated areas. Surrounding states and counties have all seen an increase in new residents from New York City, and New York State's Hudson Valley region has become an attractive oasis for weekenders and second homeowners. But some real estate insiders say social distancing and working from home means that many New Yorkers who moved in to flee the virus may never move out. And again, that's kind of what we're seeing. May 8th, Hudson Valley Post. New York City residents expected to move to the Hudson Valley in droves. If you think it's crowded in the Hudson Valley now, just wait until later this year. Real estate agents are reporting an unprecedented number of city residents who are now shopping for homes in the Hudson Valley thanks to the pandemic. People living in New York City are expected to flee their high-rises and move to Dutchess, Ulster, and Orange counties. Many people are living in apartment buildings, have been stuck indoors for weeks, not even leaving their apartments in fear of neighbors who are packed tightly together in small hallways and elevators. The thought of having a backyard and being able to walk around in a quiet neighborhood has become too tempting to resist, even for lifelong city residents. Another side effect of the pandemic that's expected to boost home sales in the Hudson Valley is the realization that working from home is now a real possibility. Since the stay-at-home order has been given in New York, many workers have found that telecommuting is just as productive as trudging into the office every day. Business owners are also realizing that video chats and connecting with employees online can even be more efficient than paying expensive rent just to hold meetings in a conference room. It's expected that many employees will be cutting down on the number of days they'll be expected to work in a physical office, even after the pandemic is completely over. This means living in the Hudson Valley is something that can be practical and even enjoyable for those who completely dread commuting. Just how this expected influx of residents may impact home prices or the quality of life for current residents is yet to be determined. But one thing is certain, things will never be the same again. New York Times, May 8th, coronavirus escape to the suburbs. For some New Yorkers, it's time to get out of town for good. Cooped up and concerned about the post-COVID future, renters and owners are making moves to leave the city, not for short-term stays in weekend houses, as was common when the pandemic first arrived, but more permanently in the suburbs. While some of the fresh transplants are accelerating plans that had been simmering on the back burner, others are doing what once seemed unthinkable, opting for split level on a cul-de-sac after decades of apartment living. Others seem to have acquired a taste for country living after sheltering with parents in places with big lawns or in log cabins. WPDH, local classic rock station in Poughkeepsie, they also do articles online, and on May 13th, seller's market driving home prices way up. And it quotes Tim Hurley, a realtor that I work with, in Kingston and Rhinebeck, says he's never seen buyers as aggressive as they are right now. Because of the global pandemic, New York City residents are moving out of their cramped apartments in crowded buildings and fleeing for the open air of the Hudson Valley. Besides fearing the virus, New Yorkers are now realizing that they can work virtually from their homes instead of heading into the office every day. It's expected that this trend will continue even after the pandemic ends, making it easier for employees to relocate out of their overpriced Manhattan apartments. Hurley says the number one question he's getting right now from potential home buyers is whether the house has high-speed internet. While demand for Hudson Valley homes explodes, the supply is currently almost non-existent. Hurley tells us springtime is usually when the market is flooded with sellers who are looking to move over the summer. Because of the pandemic, however, homeowners are holding off on the thought of moving. The thought of allowing strangers in their homes for inspections and relocating during quarantine has kept many potential sellers from putting their houses on the market. Bloomberg, May 20th. Young join the rich, fleeing America's biggest cities and suburbs. And they quote, demand for apartments in San Francisco and New York, the country's two most expensive rental markets, has dropped since the start of the pandemic. Search volumes for San Francisco rental units declined 36% soon after shelter-in-place orders took effect, according to a report listed by Zumper. And in New York City, they fell 29%. Young people have been a major force of the Back to the City movement in recent decades, helping revive moribund neighborhoods and nourish new businesses. It has also resulted in tight rental markets and higher prices, even for the cramped apartments that define the living arrangements of so many recent graduates. Aside from making it less appealing to quarantine in a small space, the shutdowns have also had an enormous economic impact on young adults. Almost 15% of those ages 25 to 34 were unemployed in April, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, with more than a quarter in their early 20s out of work. Curbed on May 21st. For families with young children, the incentive to go or stay and get creative, the calculus has turned urgent. Julia Febiger gave her birth to her first child a week and a half before the first coronavirus case in New York State was confirmed. She says it was just a lot with this fragile, vulnerable newborn, she said, particularly because she also had postpartum anxiety. She thinks was exacerbated by the pandemic. I was terrified. I felt like we were under attack. She and her husband headed to Massachusetts to be close to relatives. They're looking at houses in small towns along the Hudson River in upstate New York, which real estates say are selling hours after they go on the market, with the other emigres from the city sometimes paying full price in cash after seeing the house only on a video tour. The Hour, May 26. Frustrated and struggling, New Yorkers contemplate abandoning the city they love. Welcome to the Great Reassessment. New York City is a shadow of its pre-pandemic normal. Like Shell, many residents are out of work, out of money, out of patience, and out of sorts. Reassessments are happening throughout the country, but nowhere else are they as sharply focused as here in the nation's most populated, most dense, most diverse metropolis, where more than 21,000 have died. That's obviously the number back in May. Even with all the chaos, filth, and struggle, nostalgics have long mourned every change in what they called the vanishing city, but calls to the city's mental health hotlines have surged, whether they have left or whether they have no option to leave. New Yorkers are having to ask themselves whether the city they love is really still livable. Poughkeepsie Journal, May 28th. Real estate market to open up with increased interest from New York City buyers. Real estate agents are expected to flood of home buyers looking for big backyards with a manageable commute to the city once restrictions amid coronavirus are lifted. Agents say they have been getting an increased number of calls in recent weeks, true, from people coming up from Westchester County and New York City looking to buy homes in the rural areas of Dutchess. Sandy Tambone, CEO of Mid-Hudson MLS, says the added interest to buy in Dutchess and the low interest rates lead me to believe the seller's market will continue and home prices will increase. Although this must be tempered against how quickly and effectively our local economy gets back to work and how deep the negative impact of unemployment reach. Wall Street Journal again, May 30th. Remote work could spark housing boom in suburbs, smaller cities. Online real estate platforms are reporting increased buyer demand as remote work culture spreads, but whether they will find sellers remains an open question. The rise of remote working could empower renters in places like New York City and San Francisco to finally buy homes. just not necessarily in those cities. That could be good news for major online real estate companies like Zillow and Redfin once the market thaws out. So there you have it. That's what we're seeing, is lots of New York City buyers desperately looking for a home in the Hudson Valley right now with very low inventory, and that's going to keep prices in the near term stable, or perhaps even drive them up a little bit. We'll see, now that we're coming out of the pandemic, now that realtors can actually show houses, if more houses will be coming on the market, if that will ease, or if the total economic situation will start to drag that down. But as of right now, the Hudson Valley is really a hotbed for real estate. And of course, that's the good news. The bad news, of course, is that more than 40 million people are currently unemployed. We hope that most of them will be back to work soon. And we have almost headed towards 5 million people in mortgage forbearance. So for the long term, I think we need to be very careful about what's happening in our economy and in real estate. We could be headed for some big problems down the road, of course. Note to you, homeowners who maybe you've been out of work or you're finding times a little tough. If you're having trouble making your mortgage payments, the time to talk to your mortgage lender is now rather than later. Definitely before they end up filing a mortgage foreclosure on you. You need to be talking to them about options. And one of the options out there is forbearance. The government has been pushing this, and I would just caution you that mortgage forbearance is not mortgage forgiveness. You're still going to have to pay back the money. If you're lucky, they will move it to the back of the loan, and you'll just have a longer time period to pay it off. But you need to verify that with your mortgage lender, and you need to be in forbearance. You need to formally request to be in forbearance. You can't assume that they're just going to put you in forbearance if you stop making payments. So like I said, talk to your mortgage lender, explore your options, and explore them very carefully. Be sure that the forbearance is going to be put on the end of the mortgage, and you're not going to be expected to pay it in one lump sum after 3 months or 6 months. The other trend that we need to watch is commercial real estate. Unfortunately, we know that a lot of businesses are going to be going out of business. And we also know that this trend is probably going to turn a long-term trend of people working at home. And the companies are going to start to look around and say, why are we paying for all this commercial space? Why are we paying for all this office space when everybody can work at home? They've been doing it for months. So we need to watch the commercial market as well. We've seen a lot of commercial space already vacant in the area, and I would expect that in the coming year we're going to see a lot more. And as we progress through this pandemic and we move forward, I promise to give more recent updates. I'm trying to do once a month, and hopefully I'll have a lot better news the next time around. Everybody stay safe, and we'll see you out there.